Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined for this Week 3 preview by Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak. We'll be breaking down every Week 3 game except for Thursday Night Football, including the Bears at the Chiefs. Bears down hellacious. The Chiefs with issues, but going to steamroll the Bears. The Falcons at the Lions. The Chargers at the Vikings. That's the fantasy week of the game. The Eagles at the Bucs. Texans at the Jaguars. You kind of get the theme. We're going to go through every game. But those are some of the games we're going to go.
The theme, to be clear, is football games. If you didn't get that after honestly the first two, it's a little disappointing.
Hashtag football games.
Are we talking baseball? I wasn't clear from the intro.
I can if you want. Denny,
Pat, next show, throw in like Padres at
Dodgers.
Rangers. What Dodgers? Padres, Rangers.
Kyle just failed the remember two baseball teams challenge. Kyle will
I was trying to think of Rockies because
he'll never remember two baseball teams. Denny's dipping his toes back in. He asked me before the show actually about his O's. He seemed panicked about them, even though they have Czech's Notes, the best record in the American League.
I'm spoiled. What can I say? I'm spoiled as an O's fan. I'm used to being the best. I want to stay the best.
2.5 games ahead of the Rays. They're really hoping they hold on to that number 1 seed. The top 2 seeds, of course, very important now in the MLB postseason. But is much more important than baseball. I hate to admit it as a baseball fan. Is the NFL football. You guys care about that a lot more. We care about that a lot more on the Rotoworld Football Show. And we begin in Kansas City, where the scuffling Chiefs welcome the free-falling Chicago Bears to town as monumental 13-point home favorites. Denny, there are offensive concerns on both sides, but the Bears are several orders of magnitude greater than the Chiefs. Justin Fields has pledged to stop playing so robotic. He has also, as you noted on Galaxy Brains, pledged to stop ever telling the truth after he blamed his struggles on coaching. What is the Week 3 and going forward hope for Justin Fields and this offense? I kind of feel like something's going to get opened up this week, and we're going to at least get some fantasy points against the Chiefs.
I feel okay about the prospects for the Bears finally doing that thing where they let Justin Fields run more. Now, Justin Fields has 4 design rushing attempts in 2 games, which should be criminal. Congress should be
having 4 per half. 4 per half sounds a little better than 4 in 2 games.
And but this is what we have so far. We have them trying to make him Justin Fields into a pocket passer. He does have 13 rushes overall, so I do want to be clear that he's still leaving the pocket. He's still effective. He rushed for a touchdown against the Bucs, kind of saving his fantasy day.
But it was 4 carries for 3 yards against the Bucs.
Yeah,
it was
not a lot.
Honestly, insane.
Not a lot. So maybe when he says I want to play less robotic and more instinctively, maybe that means more running and more scrambling. I think we can hope so. Here's the thing: we kind of got a monkey paw situation with the Bears offense where all off season we said, you know what, if they could get to the middle of the league and pass rate over expected, it might be good, right? It might be good for everyone. Well, they have, and it's been bad.
It's been so bad.
I should say they're 20th in pass rate over expected, so not quite in the middle, but
the point you're making
not
is
32nd.
Really funny though. It's really funny though, because they were, the 31st, 32nd in every sort of how much do you pass type of metric. Yeah. You're totally right. We just need a little more passing production, and there's maybe a reason they were 31st in pass attempts, 32nd.
Yeah, it's been awful. So I actually think they need to get back to the super run heavy stuff if they're going to be a functional offense.
Why did they create this 3-headed monster in the backfield too if they weren't going to use it at all? I want Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson to get the majority of these touches. I don't really think shutting down Deontay Foreman does anything for the Bears offense good. They need him active. They probably need him involved in the game plan. And Denny, when you talk about playing less robotic, more instinctively, our dude is saying he's going to do one read and then take off and run.
Yeah,
which is all we want in fantasy.
Yeah, oh god, it can be so good. Game script this week against Kansas City, which by the way has a really good defense so far. Actually, disturbingly good to the point of if you're a Kelsey or Mahomes drafter, you're not feeling great at the moment. But so we could get double-digit rushes this week from Fields.
We could, and the Chiefs defense usually gets really good in the second half of the season. They always adjust and kind of start to clamp down. It is very unusual to see it good in the first half of the season. Kyle, speaking of the Chiefs, we don't really have clarity on this receiver situation at all after 2 weeks. We got a few big plays from Sky Moore. I think in week 2 was one of them like a coverage bust. Was that week 1?
No, it was last week that it was like roughly a coverage bust. I mean, you get a lot of coverage busts with Mahomes. So if you play the bulk of the snaps, like Mahomes did the thing where he rolls out, incredible job avoiding like an edge defender or something. And he buys like 5 seconds of time. That is so long for an entire defense to try and cover 3 receivers, tight end, and running back. One of them gets open very often for Mahomes. That was Sky Moore, and he got 54 yards, if I remember correctly. Non-touchdown. He had a touchdown that came earlier in the game. But, I mean, he has, I think, a sub 15% target share. None of the receivers, at least, have a target share over 15%. The clarity we got last week is that there is no clarity by design. It's not that, like, oh, let's just wait and see who emerges. Like, the guy who earns the most targets on a per-snap basis plays 11 snaps. That's Kadarius Toney. Back-to-back DNPs, if I remember correctly. I checked news, I think, just before I logged on.
Yep.
Don't know if we'll see him. If he doesn't play, I mean, he earns a lot of targets, so that's more targets to go around for what is ultimately going to be like 2 to Rashee Rice, 1 to Justin Watson. Like, it's not going to clearly funnel to a single player because Toney is just that unique, but also unique in that he can only play 11 snaps. Even then, he gets hurt. So, no, I mean, I'm kind of holding on to Sky Moore, if only because maybe he's still talented. I know 100% for sure maybe. I know it's a very maybe at this point, but I know 100% for sure what MVS is. We're not getting a breakout. We'll have one breakout game and he'll disappear. I'm still pitching myself in the mirror on like Sky Moore's college production was really good. It is very like me crying into the mirror saying like, you believe this. I know you still believe this. It's probably not happening, but if you want to stash one, it's Sky Moore. Do you need to stash any of them? Not at all. Feel free to cut them if you need to pick up this week's streaming defense or whatever.
You know what's just so funny about these Chiefs receiver struggles? By the way, you didn't mention Noah Gray. I'm sure we'll get 3 targets this week. They've been bad. They've been bad by their offense by their standards. There really is no debating that. We're not getting fantasy goodness from any of the pass catchers. It kind of like creates the sense that like Patrick Mahomes is struggling in fantasy, and then you look. And he's the QB3 by average fantasy points through 2 weeks. And it just
keeps getting away with it, doesn't he?
Does not matter. He could literally be throwing to the Rotoworld football showcast, and he would still be like the QB17. Like, it just does not matter.
I would like to test that theory.
We should actually, yeah. And Denny Carter's patellar tendon, it was a non-contact injury. He was jogging and it just ruptured.
Immediately, by the way, my hamstring would explode.
An immediate non-contact #rupture for Denny Carter. Denny, Chiefs backfield, not a whole lot more certainty there. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco is the lead back. The workloads are not what people like me were expecting when we kind of thought Isaiah Pacheco would be an under-the-radar RB2. A lot of the sharps were fading Isaiah Pacheco. They look very correct so far. Even though Jerick McKinnon has like barely played, they were kind of in on CH having another role. Like, is it as bad as it looks for Isaiah Pacheco, or is there hope for people like me?
So just real quick, Pacheco has a hamstring contusion. Fancy word for a bruise. Sorry if you can hear my dog. He also drafted Pacheco in every league. And
he was among the sharps, as they say.
Yes, and so Pacheco missed practice Wednesday. He was back on Thursday, I think in a limited capacity. So it looks like he'll be okay for this week. Here's the thing with the Chiefs offense. We're used to seeing them pass heavy, but this season has been like a new level of pass heavy. Over the first 2 weeks, they're 15% over their expected pass rate. The next closest team is the Vikings at 8% over their expected pass rate.
They're nearly twice as pass heavy relative to expectation than the number 2 team. They're like an order of magnitude ahead. They're like totally 100% cool with giving up on running the football.
Right.
You got Patrick Mahomes. I don't care who he's throwing to. That's a perfectly understandable strategy.
And so Pacheco actually is leading the team in route rate and target rate.
Excuse me?
I mean,
which if you would have told me that in the summer, I'd be like, all right, I'd be seriously calling the United States Treasury, like how much, just hear me out. How much does it cost to get a money printer at my home? How much does it cost to get a money printer at my home?
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't hear that information then, because you'd be in trouble with
$2 million in the hole on a loan to a very, very unsavory person.
Yeah. So
that unsavory person, the U.S. government.
All right.
No, his name is Salvatore.
So I want to be somewhat bullish on Pacheco because the numbers seem okay, but this team is clearly okay with just never running the ball.
Yeah, as they probably should be. Like you said, the Bears can't be okay with never running the ball, Kyle. They have not done so effectively. Again, as I referenced, they made Deontay Foreman a healthy scratch for week 2. I just don't see that continuing. Is they're going to throw this car in first and go really, really run heavy. It's a matter of when, not if. Probably not week 3 against the Chiefs, unless they think they could win with keep away ball, which they won't be able to do.
Yeah, it would have to be like the Malik Willis versus the Chiefs, where they sort of started to get away with it. And I think they lost that one, right?
So is there anything there though with Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, or can't flex either of them, or desperation flexes at best?
Yeah, I guess you could call Khalil Herbert a desperation flex because he's getting still the majority of the carries for the backfield. But I'm not sure how long this lasts. We saw once they scratched Deontay Foreman, we saw Roshan Johnson's snap rate go up slightly. He leads the team in routes. He leads the team in pass blocking reps, and his share of the backfield touches went up by 10%. Like immediately, he didn't get all of the Deontay Foreman, whatever he was going to have, whatever he thought he would have in the preseason. But like that already started to go to him. He looks really good both on the ground and catching passes. Like, to me, this is what like a midseason breakout looks like. We're already starting to see from week 1 a usable role in terms of his pass catching production. And then maybe we start to get more improvement in terms of his cut of the carries pie. And then what if they start running the football more because you do not want to throw the football? Like there's a very clear on-ramp to like RB 2+ numbers in week 8. I don't think we're there yet. I'm not playing him yet. But if you tell me one of them is going to score more points over the second half of the season, my chips are all in on Roshan.
The Bears, by the way, do not have a defensive coordinator for this game. Our thoughts are with them.
Yes.
A Bills team that corrected course in week 2 visits the 2-0 Washington Commanders. I think that's not a typo. As roughly touchdown favorites in Washington. Kyle, how real do we think Josh Allen's dink and dunk ball was in week 2, or only Zach Wilson at a lower average intended air yards, according to Next Gen Stats?
Yeah, I would say being in that tier of like that's true dink and dunk stuff. You do not want to be mentioned in the same sentence as Zach Wilson.
No.
That's probably fake. I mean, we saw in week 1, Josh Allen is the most Josh Allen he's ever been. At least he was in that game. The insane like hurdle attempt, the complete YOLO deep balls, and they probably strategically chose to reel that in week 2. It also worked out well, so I understand why they would go in that direction. If you told me he has career low or second lowest ADOT in this season, that checks out. Like Gabe Davis just cannot get separation. Last year, he was 87th in ESPN's open score. He was 79th in average separation per next gen. This year, just 2 games, but he's 89th. Like the deep threat cannot get away from whatever corner is covering him. And after that, you look at their investments. It's investing in a tight end. It's investing in like Swiss Army knife pass catching type of running back, James Cook. It's re-upping a massive contract for Dawson Knox. So I don't think it will be low. We complained all season about like the Justin Herbert ADOT. I'd be shocked if we get that kind of ADOT from Josh Allen.
Too many dogs barking inside that soul for that to happen.
It is. I mean, like I said, in week 1, he's as crazy as he's ever been. I do think
He
maybe
really was.
It was nuts. Oh man, it was great.
Dude,
I do think
Josh Allen playing with the flare gun. I'm not really sure what's going on here, Joe, but I believe he just shot a flare at Khalil Shakir, who's now injured and in the blue tent. It's all right.
Oh, man.
My point was over, so I'm very happy with that.
We'll move on then to the Washington Commanders receivers, Denny Carter, because I don't know what to do with them. I'm assuming many of our listeners don't know what to do with them. Maybe we were too hasty to kind of quote bury Terry McLaurin after week 1, but he was ahead of Jahan Dotson in week 2, but neither one of them were producing. Even though they won the game, they scored 35 points in the game. What do we tell people about the Commanders receivers?
Listen, Terry McLaurin has one good catch this year. So let's just be clear about that. Like beyond that, him and Dotson have done nothing. This Commanders offense, for as functional as it has been through much of the past 2 weeks, doesn't really target receivers so far. They're 28th in wide receiver target share, By the way, they're second in tight end target share for what that's worth. Logan
Thomas now hurt.
Right. Logan Thomas might
Probably
be out. So
sorry.
Yeah, we'll see what that means for John Bates or Cole Turner for week 3. Anyway, this is a dink and dunk offense. Commanders have the 8th lowest average depth of target. Dotson, by the way, has a slight edge in target share, while McLaurin has a huge edge in air yards. So it appears that Terry McLaurin is going to be, or for now is, the big play receiver. It's hugely disappointing, I think, for folks who drafted Dotson later and said, "Oh, I got Washington's wide receiver 1." I was one of those people. Like, I thought, okay, well, Dotson's going to take over here. His usage has been bad, just plain bad. There's no upside to it right now. So I guess you start him if you have to, but you probably can do better coming into this week.
By the way, we're probably not going to get a ton of command, even if they want to start targeting the receivers more, as they have to do. Producer Adam reminds us they are expecting very, very poor weather in the Mid-Atlantic and the Washington, D.C. area this weekend. They could have to really, really focus on the running games. James Cook missed practice Thursday, but it was because his significant other had a baby.
Oh,
so he
congrats.
will be. We had a blurb up on him missing practice. He will be back and playing. In this game, where again the run game could feature very heavily. Apparently, it's going to be really windy. I tell you, every time we get concerned about the weather, like nothing happens.
Yeah. Also, this just means it's a Latavius Murray game. We all know that.
Oh, yuck! You're right. Yeah,
we can take that out and post, as it's known. We can take that comment out and post.
All right. Well, that wraps up this game. Move us on, Pat.
It does. The Titans and the Browns have both already won and lost ugly this season. Denny, can we trust either of these offenses? Who the Titans looked a lot better than the Browns did in week 2. The Browns, a total horror show against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football.
I mean, I'm with you. I think I trust the Titans a little more than the Browns at this point. The Titans are 20th in EPA per play through week 2. Cleveland is 29th, like right around just barely above the Jets. Okay. So not pretty for the Deshaun Watson led Browns. Here's the thing about this game. I think that as a community, as a football community, we are overstating the extent to which the Titans are a pass funnel. Okay. And I think this is accentuated by how bad Josh Kelly was last week, and Justin Herbert having a nice game. But through 2 weeks, the Titans are only the 11th most extreme pass funnel. Okay. So like it's not like teams are completely bailing on the run. What I'm saying is that if you picked up Jerome Ford this week, I think you're starting him. I've seen suggestions
Absolutely
otherwise saying you can't start anybody against the Titans. I beg to differ. I think that you're starting Jerome Ford this week.
No, absolutely. Which Kyle segues into. I was going to ask if there's any Kareem Hunt concern for Jerome Ford. I mean, maybe there could be in some future weeks. It is interesting. I mean, we know that they chose Jerome Ford over Kareem Hunt. We also know that might have been more financial than maybe necessarily on field. We also know on field, Kareem Hunt did absolutely nothing last year. And at least for week 3, I'm not at all concerned about Kareem Hunt. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think Hunt is in purely because he knows the system well. That's it. That's all I have, because he was pretty dreadful last year. It was his second worst season in his own career in missed tackles forced per attempt, yards after contact per attempt, PFF rush grade. He had a negative rush yards over expected, and the Browns recognized all this and gave him his second fewest carries per game. The only time he had fewer carries than last year was when he joined the Browns mid-season after a suspension. So to me, they saw he was struggling badly, and then they scaled his workload back. That tells me pretty much everything I need to know. And then, like you said, they chose Jerome Ford straight up over him. They're going to continue choosing Jerome Ford straight up over him. He'll be a backup. He'll get some third down work. He might even score a frustrating touchdown. But all in all, I think the role remains extremely strong for Jerome Ford.
Denny, on the other side, the Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Hopkins, 2 pretty unimpressive games. The second one, I think maybe they were kind of limiting his – I don't remember if they limited his snaps. Maybe limiting his touches as he was playing with a hamstring injury. They did up his usage a lot in the second half and overtime in week 2. But – what do we tell people about DeAndre Hopkins? And what is going to be a run-first offense very much reverted to super, super run-heavy in week 2, 25 Derrick Henry carries.
Yeah, and the Browns so far are a run funnel, so we just have to keep that in mind. Probably see more massive rushing attempts from Henry this week. I mentioned DeAndre Hopkins in the regression files this week, which you can find on our site. I have a feeling I am going to have DeAndre Hopkins in there every single week this year because everything it looks pretty good, from the peripherals, from all the nerdy metrics. It all looks good. He's out there a lot. He's dominating targets, dominating air yards, and it doesn't matter at all. Treylon Burks, total dust. Hopkins, Hopkins dust.
He would have had a 75-yard touchdown last week if he just kept his footing. He still had a 70-yard catch.
It's curious that he couldn't keep his footing.
It was very curious.
You're starting Hopkins. You don't have a better option, but it's pretty bleak. I mean, you basically have to root for the Titans to get down multiple scores in the second half in order for Hopkins to do his thing.
I know a team who is not putting them down multiple scores in the second half. I know a team who may not mount multiple scores in this game, and that's the Cleveland Browns.
That's right.
The Browns are nearing do or die territory for this Deshaun Watson experiment.
Yes.
You said that it's not like the Titans are as extreme of a pass funnel as they were last year yet. They are still a team that you're not going to really have a ton of success running the ball on. And even if we like Jerome for it, they're breaking in a new starter this week. Deshaun Watson and the passing attack has to show something. If they can't show anything in this game, it's a genuine crisis. And they're going to be on the hook for a lot of guaranteed money that they can't get out of.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing they have none of their own picks for the next 40 years.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson is looking not too terrible.
All right, come on, man.
Dude, DTR is good. Don't come on, man.
DTR is better.
All right, we'll move on we'll be right back after this. It's an old-time AFC rivalry renewed on Sunday Night Football as TJ Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the desert to face Devontae Adams and the Las Vegas Raiders in Nevada. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. So absolutely beautiful graphic we had there for the Steelers.
Dude, I noticed that too. That's good looking.
That was beautiful. Sorry if you're listening in audio form and you did not get to see the work.
It's gorgeous. I actually started crying.
It was truly gorgeous.
You started crying at like the 3-minute mark in the show, which we didn't show any graphics of that.
Well, you know what has people crying? Kyle Pitts. The Falcons and the Lions meet up in Detroit to surprisingly, in my opinion, modest 46 game total. Kyle, there is no shortage of fascinating storylines in this game. Well, let's start with the most frustrating. The aforementioned has everyone crying. Kyle Pitts. Is he still usable as a tight end one? I ask you this question because we talked about on our waiver show Monday. I was starting about, I don't know about this Kyle Pitts. And you were saying you did still know about this Kyle Pitts. As a Zoomer, you were required to keep the faith for at least 2 more years in this lost cause of Kyle Pitts.
Oh, my God.
What do you tell the folks about Kyle Pitts?
I 100% am keeping the faith until his second team, which I assume if they have a heart, they'll decline his 5th-year option and let him walk to another team. And that won't work out. And then depending on the team after that, that's where my breaking point maybe lies. We are so far from that breaking point. I'm still doing the Kyle Pitts thing. It's very easy to do the Kyle Pitts thing this year because the tight end 12, so like the final tight end 1, in reality last week, scored 10.1 PPR points. In week 1, it was 8 points. Like, tight end is so terrible. Kyle Pitts fumbles a designed carry for minus 1.2 fantasy points in week 1, and you would have only lost 9 points relative to the tight end 12. There is no risk involved in Kyle Pitts' poor performances, which we're probably getting zero balled again before the year's over from Kyle Pitts. This team just runs too much for that to not happen, but his usage remains really strong. Running around on over 90% of the team's dropbacks, so there's no subbing him out for certain plays. If they're passing plays, target share of 16% is fine, and because he's the only guy they accept throwing deep to, he has air yard share of over 50%, which is it's not sustainable, but it's hilarious, and it tells you where this team is at. So for me, yeah, Kyle Pitts, I don't know. He wouldn't rank as a tight end 1 in a lot of other fantasy seasons. Luckily, this one is not a good one for tight ends.
I wish I loved anything as much as Kyle Pitts loves dominating, quote, shares and not posting any actual production.
He does dominate shares. By the way, Kyle, are you starting Pitts over Taysom Hill this week?
Yeah, not by a ton, though. I have Taysom Hill ranked like pretty high, like 13 or 14, I think.
Absolutely disgusting. Is there any explanation why he is listed as a tight end still? He does not ever play the position of tight end.
I don't
I'm
care.
really not clear why the services continue to list him as a tight end.
I don't care. And
it's got to be a lobbying group. And I think if you looked at receipts Denny Carter has stuffed somewhere in an envelope, there might be some of his in that lobby group.
I'm not going to argue with it. Let's just go with it.
Let's just go with that. We'll talk about that a little later in the show. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the Lions 1A back. All indications are that David Montgomery is going to be out with this really, really deep thigh bruise. As we know by now, speaking of frustration, he didn't get the Lions backfield all to himself when DeMont left in week 2. Craig Reynolds mixed in for some touches, but the passing game involvement was already way up for Jahmyr Gibbs, even before the David Montgomery injury. Safe to say, even if it's going to remain a committee, he's going to be the 1A. How excited can we get for Jahmyr Gibbs against the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, I think we're looking at a what the Zoomers are calling a smash spot for Gibbs against a not so intimidating Atlanta front seven. Here's the thing about Monty, the kids are calling him this, is that he accounted for 65% of the team's rushing attempts before he went out, before he left the game in week 2. So that's a lot. That's a lot of meat on the bone that is available for both Gibbs and Craig Reynolds, he is a person. Stop saying he's not. I have him on multiple teams. He's my RB1.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
And I was actually going to make a joke about being down bad at running back, but I'm great at running back.
You've never been better.
Anyway, we're getting back to
Craig Reynolds. Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot about Craig Reynolds. We're about to go in.
Jahmyr Gibbs, listen, he went from 17% routes in week 1 to 57% in week 2. He had 9 targets last week, caught 7 of them. It's a great spot. I mean, this is what you've been waiting for.
Is this a Bijan Robinson explosion spot? I'm just going to open this up to the field where the usage was good. Exactly true. The usage was good in week 1. It was better in week 2. He actually got some green zone touches. The Falcons already really seen like cut-ups of his sick cuts. He's really, really, really good. Are we getting already percolating? Are we getting a Bijan explosion in this game?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, he's so good that like I don't really care if he gets 28% of this team's carries. They run so much and he's so efficient.
Yeah,
that's like 120 yards locked in. But Pat, you pointed out like the more important thing, which is that his snap share rose, his share of the team's carries rose, his share of the team's routes rose. Like they are unsurprisingly getting this dude to be a full-time guy. And eventually I think we'll see Algier as we talk about how does Kyle Pitts have all these incredible shares and puts no production. Algier will have, I think at some point, a very modest share of the backfield, and he'll still have 10 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown because that's how much this team runs. So absolutely an explosion spot. They mostly all are, but like you said, this one in particular, we're heading in the right direction in terms of usage. It's a good matchup. This is it.
Well, we're just hoping too, a game where maybe the Lions don't so dominate the pace and tempo of the game on the road against a really good offense in the Lions. Hopefully when they're playing from behind, I think they're going to be forced to show their hand a lot more. I think that happened already a bit in week 2, and that was more Bijan, and that we could get the full Bijan. Denny, I see something on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, with Bijan, he doesn't even need rushing. I mean, that's the crazy thing is that he gets so much play in the passing game that it's like everything that he gets as an actual running back is just icing on the cake. So the Lions, second lowest pass rate over expected through 2 weeks. I think it's clear they want to keep the ball out of Jared Goff's hands when they can. That's why I think that depending on how this game plays out, I think Craig Reynolds sees 10 plus touches here. I do.
He's this team's Tyler Algier.
Yikes. It's going to be interesting. I forgot this is like the frustrating rookie running back off. I'm glad we have it. Mm-hmm. By the way, I have to mention Amon-Ra St. Brown appears like he will be playing, but he's going to be playing through a toe injury. It could be for several weeks. We'll see if that has any effect on his fantasy out, but I kind of doubt it since he's so compiling based. Maybe we'll get less yak than usual, but I think the PPR scam will be continuing to back a Ford F-250 into the ATM. It's going to be printing money still.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God for that. The Miami Dolphins welcome the maddeningly inconsistent Denver Broncos. I say they're inconsistent. They're actually not inconsistent at all. They just blow every game. To town as roughly touchdown favorites. Denny, do we like what we have seen so far from Russell Wilson, who, despite the 2 horrible chokes, the fantasy production has been back much closer to where it was during his prime Seahawks years. It does seem like Sean Payton is having an effect right off the bat on Russell Wilson's production.
Yes, I think that Sean Payton has successfully kind of reeled in Russ from whatever was happening last year and in his final year in Seattle. The numbers are good. 7th in adjusted EPA per play for Russell Wilson. Only a 9% downfield throwing rate. Only 9%. That's near the bottom of the league. So he's not just chucking it down the field like we're used to. I think that's reflected in his, we're going to call it the air yards conversion rate. Stick with me, folks. It's 3rd behind only Jared Goff and Sam Howell. And Sam Howell and Jared Goff generally check down a lot. So we're seeing a kind of different kind of Russell Wilson. He's giving you a little bit of rushing. It's good. I think you're starting him this week.
Did I need to do the snoring bit during air yards conversion rate? It's actually a very good stat.
That's the one that woke me up. I was snoring before that. Now I'm in. I will say with Russ, he is on the not deep passing he's doing, like on the lack of it. He's running fairly hot on a Hail Mary to Brandon Johnson, I believe, to not tie the game up, to put them in 2-point tying position, which they lost. They didn't get.
Even though there was blatant pass interference.
Yeah, I know. Oh, that's right. That's the one. It was bad. He was early.
Blatant.
Yeah. And then Marvin Mims fairly uncovered like 60-something yard touchdown. So I do worry that if Russ, like, if they're not passing deep a lot, and then he just comes back to earth in that sense, like there's some danger. It's dangerous, as he would say, for like some bad regression to hit.
Well, what about the Broncos backfield where Javonte Williams, I think if you told us in the summer he had 31 touches through his first 2 games, summer drafters would be very, very happy about that, but it's been very empty calorie, not efficient on either the ground or through the air, has not scored a touchdown, hasn't put away his touch competition by any stretch. What do we say about the Broncos backfield?
Yeah, it's all like you said. I think the more operative point is the opportunities, which that was, I think, probably to me a bigger risk that he comes into the season and just they cannot give him the workload. It's also possible that like the very catastrophic knee injury he suffered saps some of his tackle breaking ability. I think if his lack of efficiency continues for a few more weeks, you probably do start to get concerned that the volume is not super meaningful right now or at that point. But right now, I'm still going to fall back on volume is king. He's got 61% of the team's carries and a 14% target share. He's been elite in targets per route run. They're like scheming him stuff, looking to him for checkdowns. So I'm going to hold the faith, but his efficiency is definitely something that scares me more than other backs' efficiency because it could have a real underpinning of there's something going on with this player where it's like some other players, it's, oh, he got rammed into heavy boxes for a game. That's probably not sticky. This could be endemic to who he is at this very moment in his career.
Forgot to ask anything about the Dolphins. Do we have anything to say about the Dolphins? Raheem Mostert, a lot of touches in week 2.
Yeah.
The passing game, quieter against Bill Belichick and company.
Jalen Waddle still hasn't practiced, right? I believe I saw earlier today they didn't practice. He's dealing with concussion, if I remember correctly. I don't even know what you do with this information, though. Like, who's like, oh man, I've been sitting on this river crack raft in my 48 team dynasty league. I've been waiting to play him. Like, I guess the only thing is maybe more targets for Durham Smythe because he plays every single snap. And when you take someone off the field like Jalen Waddle, who is so clearly a great target earner, he just happens to be his team's too. Like, yeah, Durham Smythe could be a really down bad streaming option. He will be, in fact. Like, I'm confident saying that he's a okay streaming option, especially if Waddle doesn't play.
I have the answer, by the way, to what do you do with this Jalen Waddle thing? And the answer is Braxton Berrios. There you go.
I've got some Braxton Berrios on some real scuzzy best ball teams.
Yeah, yikes. I'd say the Dolphins, not much to say about the Dolphins on a weekly basis. They are so narrow, but back-to-back DNPs, that is confirmed for Jalen Waddle. That's tough to overcome. He's got to get in at least a limited practice on Friday. If he does not, I don't know if he even has enough time to clear the protocol. So definitely keep it locked to rotoworld.com for updates on that one. The Packers host the Saints as modest 2-point home favorites, Kyle. Has Jordan Love's hot start, quote unquote, really just been a fluky touchdown rate? But maybe some of the inevitable regression, could that be offset by Christian Watson perhaps returning? He's still very, very unclear for week 3. What is the tale of Jordan Love's supposedly hot start?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fluky touchdown rate. I think it's like 11.5% or something that would like smash the NFL record. Obviously, he's not going to hang in that range. Could he be an above average starter? Yes. I'm a little bit skeptical. The defenses he's played, I believe Atlanta and Chicago last year, were 29th and 32nd in EPA per dropback. Essentially the worst defenses in the league. This year, Chicago looks no better. Maybe Atlanta looks better. They're 18th. I'm still even skeptical of that. He's gotten a decent amount of help with Yak. But on the other hand, we've talked about this before. Like the good quarterbacks, they annihilate the bad defenses. That's what he's done so far. You can at least regress toward a prior of, I don't know if he's that good, but the 2 performances have absolutely moved the needle. And what you said about Christian Watson, like, oh, do you know how you prevent your touchdown rate from going to 11.5% to 3.5%? You put in like one of the league's best touchdown scores, one of the biggest play threats we have. So if, like you said, I don't know if he's back this week or not. If he is back, I'd expect him to be limited given his history of like soft tissue injuries. But in the long run, that will absolutely help.
He did not practice Wednesday. I'm sure we could find out if he did something.
Christian Watson, he sat for rest purposes on Thursday.
Okay. Oh yeah, he's limited on a Wednesday, rested on Thursday. Sounds like he's coming back actually.
Yeah, honest. I think so.
That would be very, very, very good news because I really need him. And one of my home leagues, Denny, Chris Olave has Richard Rebar in shambles. Correct. Rich came on the show. He truthed Chris Olave. Instead, I believe he's had at least 6 catches every game, at least 10 targets, I think at least 80 yards, at least 1 40-yard reception. He's not scored a touchdown yet, but is this looking like just the next inevitable step in Chris Olave's breakout?
Yeah. Look, not much puts Rich Rebar in shambles. Okay. No. And not much at all. So that's why we are pointing it out. He finally got one thing wrong.
Seriously, it was the first time he's ever been wrong. So we will celebrate that.
Congrats on that run. You had a great run, Rich. Chris Olave, 7th in expected fantasy points among wide receivers, 14th in actual points, like Pat said. That's without a touchdown through 2 games. Olave is 6th in total air yards. Derek Carr is throwing at a league-leading rate downfield. So just really chucking it up for Olave and Rashid Shaheed. I mean, it looks good. Now, would I like to see Olave get a little more of the intermediate looks? I would, just personally. But I can't complain too much in an offense that really is not like trying to maximize points. Olave was a good pick. I think that's been bared out over the first 2 games.
Yeah, are the Saints, are they showing how to take a blowtorch to the 2 high safeties? They're running a lot. They're throwing deep a lot, kind of like what NFL offenses used to do.
Well,
they're beginning to blowtorch the deep safety, didn't he?
Now, I think that they're blowtorching.
Couldn't they not score more than like a field goal in any of their drives versus the Titans?
No,
I think they're doing this, Pat, because they're not facing 2 high safeties because it's Derek Carr under center.
He does throw deep a lot. He actually, he's always thrown deep a lot. And if Derek Carr can do it, why can't any of these other guys do it?
Yeah, well, they're 25th in points per game, so let's not crown them yet.
I mean, and getting back to what Josh Allen did against the Raiders last week, I kind of tend to think that he finally got it through his thick skull that that's what he's got to do the rest of his career.
Nope.
No, absolutely no chance. Truly no chance.
All right.
Denny's been getting a little cocky. He gotten a little used to being right lately. And he just said that Josh Allen will be comfortable becoming a ball distributor. Not going to happen.
Just a check down artist the rest of his career.
Real quick, I mentioned the Saints running the ball. It's going to be a lot harder to do this week. No Jamal Williams. Final week of Alvin Kamara suspension. Kendre Miller, they have so little faith in. He was a healthy scratch last week. And then Tony Jones leading this backfield. And presumably
Kendre wasn't healthy. He was hurt.
I believe it was healthy scratch. I'm going to double check this as I continue to monologue. But just, Kyle, what do we say about Tony Jones and the Saints backfield?
Yeah, I'm fairly confident Kendre was hurt because he missed week 1 injured. Maybe he returned for like a limited session, but still wasn't ready. But I think
he was hurt. Questionable. Yep, he was hurt.
Yeah, I was pretty sure he was.
We regret the error.
That was because it was my game, and that game was not good. I could have gone for a spry rookie busting off 15 yards of carry or something. Instead, I got Jamal Williams, then gets hurt, Tony Jones. So, yeah, I remember that one.
I do think Tony Jones, who, although like, I don't think he was with the team. Oh, he was with the Broncos, right? To start the offseason. And he comes back. He's been with the Saints prior. He knows the system well. I wouldn't be playing this guy, though. I think Kendre comes back, gets enough of the pie.
He's practicing in full, by the way, Kendre Miller.
Yeah. He's playing this week. It's just to what capacity? Because he also missed some time early in the offseason with a knee issue that he was suffering with in college. Then I believe he tweaked like a hammy or the knee again in training camp. And so like he's missed a lot of practice. I don't think he's playable in any sense, but I think he is involved enough, and especially Taysom Hill is involved enough that I'm not really playing Tony Jones. If Tony Jones was alone in this backfield, I'm a sucker. I will play any dust ball alone in a backfield. I did it with Jamal Williams. Like I did it with Josh Kelly versus the Titans. Some other running. Oh, it's Jamal Williams versus the Titans. Like, AJ Dillon. Like I do the process for these guys who are going to dominate their backfields. We're no longer in that territory for Tony Jones. So it's a stay away outside of Taysom Hill because of his phantom tight end eligibility.
Well, that's a good way to end. Tony Jones. We love our Tony Jones talk, but we are staying away from Tony Jones. We learned our lesson with AJ Dillon and Joshua Kelly, except we did not. We might have to run it back with Joshua Kelly against the Vikings. Awful run defense. The fantasy game of the week has the Minnesota Vikings catching 1 point at home in a 54 totaled affair with the 0-2 Chargers. Denny, both teams badly need this win. We will start with the Chargers in their passing game. Are we seeing what we need out of new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore? The rates are creeping upward for Justin Herbert, even though when you watch it, he still feels conservative, but the stats do tell a different story. He's throwing deeper down the field.
He is. And that's good. That's good for Mike Williams, especially. Maybe if Quentin Johnston can never get onto the field, that'd be good for him too. I mean, Kellen Moore has showed that he's one of these guys who will adjust to what the defense is giving them. In week one, very run heavy. Maybe I think the run heaviest in the whole league.
See, Kellen Moore, there's a reason they're giving you Josh Kelly. There's a reason for that.
That's right. And then they were, pass heavy in week two. Now they face a Vikings defense that is horrific against the run and has invited teams, including the Eagles last Thursday, begging them, please run the ball on us. And they do, and they get big chunk gains. So I think that points toward the Chargers going back to do the run heavy thing this week, which kind of stinks for a lot of us who have Chargers players not named Josh Kelly.
Speaking of the run heavy thing, the Vikings spent a lot of time talking about at least wanting to be more efficient in the running game this season, kind of hinting they wanted to run more. Instead, they've done nothing of the sort. And there's a reason for that. It's because Alexander Mattison just has not been good. They went out and gave up essentially nothing for Cam Akers, but Cam Akers is now in the Vikings backfield. Hard to say he's a threat for week 3. Might not even be active as he comes over from LA. But what does Cam Akers' addition to the Vikings backfield mean, Kyle? No way it's anything good for Alexander Mattison.
Yeah, I mean, I think if this were like a true backfield competition, you could still comfortably bet on Mattison. He has been poor to start the year. I don't think he's that great, but to me, it would be like, oh, sure, if you like Mattison, go ahead and place your chips on him. But this move like tells us something about the team. It doesn't tell us as much about like, oh, Cam Akers is so talented, but it tells us they have a clear lack of faith in what they're getting from Alexander Mattison. I ultimately don't see either of these guys emerging as like, oh, they end up scratching Akers down the road, or, oh, Cam Akers takes over the backfield. Akers has been essentially the least efficient running back in the NFL this year, not just by basic stats, which he is, but also by the NFL's next-gen rush yards over expected, which accounts for the situations that he has been put in, which haven't been great. He was poor in that stat last year. He's been poor in success rate. Just doesn't seem to have it. The only thing you can really point to is his usage late season, which we saw, which despite the team just completely falling apart, they were like, oh, let's go ahead and pile 25 carries a game on Cam Akers to end the year. That type of faith in a running back, I think, means something. The fact that a really sharp coach was willing to, the season was lost, but I'm not going to ride on that too much. A really sharp coach was willing to give him a ton of touches. Maybe he works himself more work because of that. Playing, I believe, under a Sean McVay disciple as well. So,
that's why the trade is made. As we know, nothing NFL coaches love more than players who used to play for them. And that is why Cam Akers is now in the Minnesota Vikings with Kevin O'Connell.
Yep, that's it. That's the reason.
But I mean, both these guys are just dreadfully inefficient. I don't see that changing. If anything, this like lack of faith in Alexander Mattison tells you that the pass rate over expected numbers, they're going to keep printing.
They are going to keep printing. And full mea culpa and TJ Hawkinson. I'm like, this team is going to move on from this junk volume. What I meant is that they're going to move on to more of it.
Yeah, so much of it.
TJ Hawkinson, it will, quote, never stop averaging 6.7 yards per catch, even though he is, quote, a pass catcher and not a running back.
How fantastic is it that we just know this team is just going to throw it constantly every single week? I mean, it makes Addison like a reasonable play, even though he's only running like 65% of the routes. It's fun.
It's fun. And KJ Osborne is honestly in play this week. With the Chargers through games against Tua Tagovailoa and Ryan Tannehill are allowing 10.3 yards per attempt, not completion.
Yeah. Wow.
They're allowing 10.3 yards every time the opposing Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, the Dolphins' deep game can hit you for a few deep ones. The Titans, I guess, too, they hit you on those play action deep shots, but you should not be coming out of games against Tua Tagovailoa and Ryan Tannehill surrendering 10.3 yards per attempt. That is a extremely bad sign for your pass defense. We go back to the run, though, Denny. Can we possibly go back to the Josh Kelly well? Because we just highlighted this extremely bad Vikings run defense. They gave up by far the biggest rushing performance so far of 2023 to DeAndre Swift 2 weeks ago. Josh Kelly, the second, the pressure was on him. This is if Austin Eckler doesn't play, by the way. It's
right.
Like he's not going to play. Austin Eckler's getting into like being an influencer. He's releasing like influencer videos like just feeling great, just feeling the hustle, feeling the flow, just loving the progress. And yeah, I haven't practiced it all yet, but I'm loving the progress, feeling the progress.
He said, I'm not playing this week. You know what that means? Passive income.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I am not watching the final 30 seconds of this video. No offense, Austin Eckler. But I don't think you're going to play this week. I don't think you're going to play this week. And why do film guys love Josh Kelly, by the way, Denny? I'm seeing some Josh Kelly love.
He runs really hard, I guess.
Are we playing him against the Vikings?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Kyle, where are we ranking Josh Kelly? I've got him, I think it's like the RB 19 or 20 right now.
I haven't higher than that. I'm a sick pup. He's going to
hold on. Can we talk about people were complaining about my rankings last week, which they normally don't. People are usually pretty nice. Why I got Josh Kelly. I basically raised him like 12 spots. I usually am not having so much uncertainty, but I did not know where to rank Josh Kelly. And both of you were like, you got to get him like in the top 15. Yeah. not to be fair to you guys, I was seeking counsel and I took it and it was dead wrong.
He accounted
for take our advice. That was a terrible idea.
Yeah, he accounted for 80% of the rushes. He's going to do it again this week against a much, much worse run defense in the Vikings. The Vikings desperately want teams to run. They say, please do it. And the teams oblige. They will again.
All right. He's my RB13 final answer. I just touched up my rankings.
Man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you guys again on Sunday and see what to do there. But Josh Kelly, he's in the top 24. We do know that. Even with no teams on bye, deep player pool right now, he's the only show in town for the back. That is unless Austin Eckler returns. So there's not much indication Austin Eckler is going to return. You got to take your medicine with Josh Kelly. That includes myself, as much as I may hate it. It was all Jover for the Jets in week 2 against the Cowboys, Kyle. Now they have to contend with Bill Belichick. Was week 2 the worst of it for Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and company, or is there further to fall for this Jets Zach Wilson-led attack?
Was it last week? This wasn't my game. It was last week that the 66-yard Garrett Wilson touchdown happened, right?
It was last week.
No, it's not the worst of it because we're not getting that every week. But we are getting Zach Wilson every week until they make a move at quarterback, which I still think it'll happen.
How has it not happened by now? I really don't understand.
We're probably weeks away. We need the Chargers to not do that dumb Chargers thing where they blow a 2-score lead because we got to get the Vikings to 0-4. Get the Vikings to 0-4. Send Kirk Cousins to New York, and Garrett Wilson is saved halfway through the season.
I was wondering where you're going. I was wondering why you were talking about the Chargers and Vikings again all of a sudden.
It's the red pins with all the string on the board. I'm figuring out how to save a lot of Garrett Wilson teams I drafted. We are not saving them this week. Among receivers with at least 10 targets, Garrett Wilson ranks 49th in catchable target rate. The Jets rank 26th in pass rate over expected, 30th in situation neutral pace. They are going to run the ball, pass very little, play really slow football, and you better believe the targets are not going to be catchable when they get to Garrett Wilson. It is a nightmare.
I will say for Breece Hall, the Patriots have been surprisingly vulnerable on the ground so far. I think they were kind of vulnerable on the ground last year too, so maybe it's not surprisingly. Breece Hall should get to double-digit touches and get to double-digit yards, at least as we had 9 yards from scrimmage against the Cowboys. I do think the worst of it is over for Breece Hall. I agree that it's not even close to over for Garrett Wilson. Denny, do we make anything of these Patriots offense signs of life where Mac Jones, he looked usable against the Eagles. I mean, serviceable against the Eagles. He looked serviceable again against the Dolphins, not really translating to fantasy production, at least of his own. It's translating to fantasy production for Hunter Henry. Surprisingly for Kendrick Bourne, actually not surprisingly, he's probably the best receiver in this group. I don't know why they doghoused him so much last year. What do we make of these signs of life for the Patriots?
It's a totally different offense from last season. Thank goodness for all of us and for the Republic itself. New England is 11th in pass rate over expected, 6th in shotgun usage so far this year. That's pretty good. That's totally different from 2022. The whole thing with the Patriots receivers is a little hard to figure out, but I did my best before the show, and if I'll share my findings with the class if you don't mind. In week 2, when Devontae Parker was active, and he did not play in week 1, by the way, this is how it broke down. Kendrick Bourne only ran a route on 46% of the Patriots dropbacks, but he led the team in targets and he led the team in air yards by a considerable margin. So they're not using him much, but he was still very productive. Now, Devontae Parker actually led the team in pass routes and was a close second in targets and had the more productive game. But I think Kendrick Bourne is going to be the downfield threat. Devontae Parker is going to catch the easier PPR scammy stuff, and that's the way it's going to go. I don't really know what to tell you about Bourne. I mean, Bourne would be a vastly superior option to Parker if we could, I don't know, slot him in for 70% of the routes, but at 46, it's a little iffy.
I don't think he's playable at 46, which is frustrating. Because like you said, he's got something going, but they scaled him back to an immediate part-time player. Am I playing a receiver? I don't even like Kendrick Bourne is a very retread, veteran receiver. I don't think he's elite, but let's say he's better than I've been giving him credit for. Am I playing a solid receiver running less than half of the routes on a Mac Jones passing attack? I don't think he can do that. I don't think he can do it even as much as he's been impressive so far. There's no doubt about that.
You're on mute.
Pat, you muted yourself, but you know what? Let's keep it that way.
So get more routes, Kendrick Bourne. Could really use you in Dynasty, by the way. The Ravens.
You need Kendrick Bourne in Dynasty?
I need everyone in Dynasty. I need depth. I need someone. Come on, I need depth. I'm not playing them every
You're like
week.
a best ball, bro. You just need everyone. If you just draft everyone, you can't be wrong.
I apparently have Jake Funk on my Dynasty team. I somehow want to win. It's very 14 teams, 24 deep. Actually, more like 27 because everyone's got 3 people on IR. But I was wondering who I got off waivers last night. It was John Bates, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Isn't Colt Turner going to start?
And I was like, man, I got Jake Funk last week. Apparently,
yeah, but I know we already talked about the Washington game, but the Washington tight end split pass routes last week when Logan Thomas was out. So I don't know what to make of it.
Sorry about your Dynasty team, Pat.
I've actually had the most points through 2 weeks, by the way. It's a new day. We're turned over a new leaf. The Ravens host the Anthony Richardson-less Colts, we believe, as 8-point home favorites. But Denny, we'll start with the Ravens offense. They're 2-0. They're getting the dubs, but just kind of like a lifeless, misfiring offense, I feel like. Or is that more perception than reality? I mean, we haven't seen much from Rashad Bateman. Odell Beckham's been in and out of the injury tent. Mark Andrews did miss week 1. Just a really uninspiring backfield, though. What do you make of the Ravens' offensive struggles, or can you even call them that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pretty conservative, conservative throws. I mean, the Ravens are over their expected pass rate, so we have that going for us, which is kind of nice. They're not, the super run heavy Ravens of yesteryear, your grandparents, Lamar Jackson Ravens. But it's just really not a whole lot of downfield stuff. It's a lot of check downs to Zay Flowers, to Mark Andrews. I mean, that's it. That's the list of guys who you can play on this team in fantasy. Odell Beckham, I think probably won't play this week. He has not practiced so far. The team
retirement season ? For Odell Beckham. Why was this the plan for anyone?
Yeah, so I mean, John Harbaugh just seems like, yeah, we're probably going to be with Adam, whatever. Like, I don't. I mean, does it matter that much? No, it probably doesn't.
It's Aguilar season. I think they were still giving touches to Devin Duvernay last week.
Right. I did want to mention this. Thank you for mentioning Aguilar. So
I know, like how excited you are when he says Aguilar, and you're like, "I'm in, baby. This is not going to go well."
No, I'm out. I'm out on Aguilar. Listen, when Beckham left the game last week against the Bengals, Aguilar ran about half the routes after that, and Rashad Bateman ran almost all of the routes after that. So Bateman was out there more. Now Aguilar had caught 5 of 6 for a touchdown. I get that. I get the stat line looks better, but he was. It
doesn't look better.
Bateman was the full-time guy. I don't know what to say about Bateman. I feel like maybe he's just not good. I don't know. But that role is Bateman's, it seems.
That's good. Bateman was good last year for a very brief stint before he hurt. I believe it was his foot, but like he was elite in yards per route run. He was stretching the field. He was playing like a very useful and sporadically productive role for the team. And they just gave up on that role this year. Maybe this Odell Beckham injury forces them back into it. God knows my best ball teams are praying that they do, because I really was liking drafting some Bateman. But I'm cautiously optimistic. You shouldn't have told me that, because you're getting my hopes up.
Sorry, man.
Denny, by the way, I need you to know none of my grandparents have been alive since Lamar Jackson became the starter for the Ravens, and I was very offended by your joke.
I am sorry. HR just texted me. I'm going to talk with him after.
My final grandparent passed in 2017 when he was still at the University of Louisville, so I hope you're happy.
I'm not happy. That makes me sad. I'm
sorry. It's just too weird of a joke. Sorry about that. Too weird, Denny, to rely on anyone in the Ravens backfield. Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, we got what we paid for basically last week. Both kind of like friend zoned in the 10 to 12 touch range. Any separation, anything to really care about here with these two very uninspiring RB3s.
All right. Whatever people say about us, we were right about one thing this offseason, and it's that Lamar Jackson is never going to check down to running backs. It's just not going to happen. Through week 2, the Ravens have targeted running backs at the second lowest rate in the league, trailing only the Saints. Okay. It's not happening. I can't force myself, guys, to care about these running backs. I don't care.
Well, let me interject here, because I don't know. I guess, Patrick, you guys need to read a little more of this little site I run called Rotoworld.com. Okay. Justice Turfto, he's not playing this week. Like, he missed practice Wednesday. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler tweeted that he, like, usually like he's going to push to go, but we're not sure if he can play. This was like, he might be sidelined this week. Typically when I see a reporter tweet that, I'm like, oh, if you're saying he's less likely to play than not, or than to do so, it's like, you're done. You're not playing this week. So
Denny and I are dust.
The good news is that, yes, Ravens absolutely are not going to throw their running backs. You know who wasn't catching those passes anyways? Gus Edwards. Dude was not going to catch any of these mythical throws we had schemed up in the offseason. He's between the tackles. He's really efficient at that. And the Ravens run their backs between the tackles a lot. Like, they're right now 5th in rushing expected fantasy points for their entire backfield. Now that backfield probably condensing, I'm going to say 1.5 guys. Kenyon Drake was signed to the practice squad. He'll be called up on Saturday. Has he been with the team before? I feel like he's definitely
he was last year. Yeah.
Right.
What about Melvin Gordon? Is he still on the Ravens?
No, that guy wasn't real. You've talked about this quote Melvin Gordon character for a while. We've never seen him. One of these guys, if not both of them, will undoubtedly steal some touches. They'll steal almost all the passing down work, because like I said, Gus doesn't really do that. But you give me Gus Edwards perennial 5.2 yards per carry. Like, you give that guy 15 carries. Like, yeah, I'm in for that. I'm going to have him ranked as like sketchy RB3, I think.
We would be remiss if we did not mention the Zach Moss as an every down player right now. We would also be remiss if we did not come back right after this. Now that the NFL season is in full swing, we've got you covered. In addition to our 3 Rotoworld football shows a week, please check out the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry and Bet the Edge every weekday. You can watch the Happy Hour at noon and 4 p.m. Eastern on Peacock. It's also available on the NFL on NBC Sports YouTube page. And Bet the Edge drops Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. on our NBC Sports YouTube page. Both shows are also available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Guys, I don't know if you realized that we got a lot of games left. Gonna have to go faster.
I think we got some bad ones, though. It shouldn't be hard to fire.
Don't let the audience hear this comment, by the way.
Yeah. Let's just take
Adam,
that
edit
out.
this out. Adam, edit this out.
No, all right. We're gonna blitz the end of this show. The 2-0 Philadelphia Eagles host the surprisingly 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers as 5-point home favorites. Kyle, we've seen shocking production from Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans through 2 weeks, while the Eagles' injury-ravaged secondary is struggling. Any chance the Tampa Bay Buccaneers keep this passing game production rolling?
Nah, this scam is coming apart at any moment. I mean, Baker right now leads the NFL in yards per attempt and completion percentage from under pressure. You know who has been terrible under pressure for most of his career? Baker Mayfield. You know what stats like aren't particularly sticky in small samples? Under pressure stats. I don't believe he will be able to be the best quarterback in the NFL by far when under pressure. I think he's probably below average at it. Maybe you could say just regress to league average, whatever. He's going to be pressured so much. The Eagles are right now top 5 in pressure rate. They haven't been getting a ton of sacks. That's also another thing where pressure is much stickier than sacks. They're going to get to him. They'll probably sack him. He'll probably struggle under pressure. The house of cards comes down this week.
Oh, come on. That's kind
I
of
like it. That's a great call.
The pressure's a problem, but the secondary is also a problem for the Eagles. They're majorly banged up. I don't know if
They are. Yeah.
but I would not like I'm starting Baker Mayfield though. Denny DeAndre Swift had the game of the year so far in week 2. We don't know Kenneth Gainwell's week 3 status. As of the show, they had yet to release an official practice report since the game is on Monday night. Been kind of all over the map on the Kenny Gainwell injury front. But what do we do with DeAndre Swift? Do we trust him with or without Kenneth Gainwell? If no Kenneth Gainwell, you have to at least consider him in the RB1 mix. What do we say about DeAndre Swift?
I usually like, hot-ish takes on these sort of things, but I'm going to have to go the extremely cold take route and remind folks that DeAndre Swift was in the perfect position last week against the Vikings. Like I said, the Vikings were asking them to run the ball. They obliged. Boston Scott left the game at halftime after carrying it 5 times for 40 yards in the first half. Kenny Gainwell was out. Okay. Rashad Penny apparently is not a thing. So it was all Swift. Like they really didn't have another option besides Penny, which I guess is not an option. What I'm saying is some of those things kind of evaporate and suddenly Swift is not looking like a smash play every single week. I'm not saying that you don't start him here. I think you do start him. I think he showed enough where the Eagles will use him probably as their primary rusher. But this is a team that doesn't throw to running backs. We have to remember because Jalen Hurts is mobile quarterback and mobile quarterbacks don't throw to running backs. So I don't get too excited about the DeAndre Swift. Please, I'm begging you, don't get excited.
Is a perennially run tough Bucs defense too. So it looks like it's holding tight through the first 2 games of 2023. Currently 3-point home favorites as we await word on Joe Burrow's health. It does not seem good. The Rams host the Bengals. Danny, let's focus on the Rams, though, at first, and the sustainability of Puka Nacua and Kyren Williams' outrageous stats and usage to begin the 2023 season. Is this going to keep up?
Yeah, I mean, everything says usage-wise that this is pretty sustainable. Now, I mean, are we going to have like insane volume every single week that helps to fuel these wild numbers? Probably not. But Puka Nacua is out there on every route. So far this year, oh shoot, I lost the thing. Kyren Williams has a good route rate. Nacua is leading the league in first read targets. Like it's not like Stafford is just happening upon Puka Nacua, who, by the way, it was reported today, Puka Nacua has been having breakfast with Matthew Stafford. That would have been
Why
nice
didn't the reporters tell us this in July? I'd have been drafting Puka in every draft.
Jover for Tyler Higbee.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess Tyler Higbee maybe he does. Maybe he fasts in the morning. He doesn't eat breakfast.
I don't understand why don't the rest of these guys. It's only gonna be a few years of your life that you have to get up early. Just go have breakfast with Matthew Stafford. He's a breakfast supremacist. Apparently, if you don't eat breakfast with him, he just thinks you're not worthy of his targets.
And don't use your phone around Matthew Stafford.
Please, God, do not use your phone around.
He'll get mad. He'll get upset. So Puka Nacua threw away his phone. He's eating breakfast with Stafford. He's seeing tons of targets. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are ranking him as a wide receiver 1-ish this week.
I am wide receiver 11.
Yeah.